Hey there. What's the difference between wanting something versus intending for something? It's huge energetically. One is positively oriented and constructive, while the other is negatively oriented and destructive. And if you are a follower of Esther Hicks and her understanding of how to apply the law of attraction, today's episode is going to put that into context. And you'll recall that she says the same thing. When you want something, you can't get it. So the answer to how do you get what you want is to use intention instead. That's this week's topic that I promised I'd share with you today. I promised in last week's. And this is an episode for mastering your inner game. And I do two types of episodes on this podcast. One is online marketing and content strategy. And this is about mastering your inner game because they both go hand in hand if you want a successful business. But before I get into today's topic, my name is Liz Garcia. I am your happy, insightful, and perceptive host of AthenaArenaRadio.com. Welcome to episode 9 of the Athena Arena podcast, which is the content and digital marketing strategy academy for aspiring 6, 7, and 8-figure, what I call Wonder Woman brands, and mastering your inner game. And for all you brilliant men out there, don't be fooled by the whole Wonder Woman thing. This is meant for your inner Superman too. So today, I've been talking to you about the fact that I'm a teacher of consciousness, and I'm on a mission to share what's known as the map of consciousness, which was developed by a genius-level psychiatric leader in the world of psychiatry, genius-level understanding of the human psyche and all of that good stuff. And he developed the map of consciousness over decades of consciousness research. And it was such a revelation to me to understand where true power is and what the consequences of aligning with negatively oriented power, or force is what it's really called. Force is the negative orientation of energy versus power, which is the positive expression of energy. So I'm going to refer to the map of consciousness often in mastering these inner game episodes because it's such a power play for this to come into your awareness. And understanding that just to be exposed to the map of consciousness can raise your level of consciousness 35 points on the map, which is quantum in nature, considering the fact that according to consciousness research, most of us only raise our level of consciousness about 5 points in a lifetime. So to come into the awareness of the map of consciousness, start to apply it in your life, start to align with level of consciousnesses, higher levels of consciousness that you would aspire to, is going to raise your level of consciousness more significantly if you hadn't, as opposed to not having come into your awareness. So I have my other podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness, addresses this all the time and describes the different levels of consciousness, which I'll share in show note links below. But in any event, to get a handle on what the map of consciousness is, I highly recommend Dr. David R. Hawkins' book, The Map of Consciousness Explained, as opposed to his most renowned book called Power versus Force, because Power versus Force is very high-level kind of quantum physics, mechanics type of understanding. And most people don't get it. So I think the Map of Consciousness Explained is a lower level, easier entryway for most of us. So we're going to talk today about the energy of intending for something versus the energy of wanting something. Now, Based on the map of consciousness and consciousness calibrations, which I get these calibrations out of many of Dr. Hawkins' book. Truth versus Falsehood is like an encyclopedia of calibrations. And I now subscribe to a website called consciousnesscalibrations.com that gives a lot of present day meaningful calibrations to put what's going on in the world into context. Like, is this person speaking the truth? Do they know what they're talking about? Or how if they do, how high a level are they speaking at? As an example. So it's super helpful to have these resources for us to put life into context. And as I see it, like energetically, we go from like this scattered, distracted, energetic human being that's not maybe indecisive about things, unsure. You think you know something and you're really adamant about knowing it when in fact you don't. That's the ego working within us. The narcissistic core of the ego loves to run the show. Versus being discerning and confident and understanding and compassionate, and having humility that we don't know all that we think we do by one iota. I mean, Dr. Hawkins, who is brilliant, understands consciousness, realizes the mind is really not reliable to a certain extent. So anyway, so we're going to put intention into context versus wanting something. And as I said earlier, Esther and Jerry Hicks, speaking of the law of attraction, they're always like, wanting something keeps it from you having it because there's inherent resistance in the wantingness of something, or the desire. The energy of desire or getting something is of the lower mind, of the ego, which is not to disparage it because we all have it running. It's part of being human. But it's good to understand the energy of it. So the energy of wanting something calibrates at 125 on the map of consciousness. And if you recall, anything that calibrates below 200 is negative aspect oriented, downward pulling, and holds no truth. And you don't want to hang out here because you're not going to manifest what you want. You're not going to manifest what you intend if it's coming from this wantingness, desirous energy. And the website that I love to share, Consciousness Calibrations, did a map of spiritual progress, which has some good information about the energy of both of these. So I want to let's talk about wantingness first. The energy of wanting something or desiring something at 125 on the map. And he uses it in regards to different chakras. So in the crown chakra, the energy that's going on there is egotistical. And in the third eye, it's a fantasy. So I'll give you a great example because I've been prey to this one, is you use what your understanding is of the law of attraction to win the lottery. And then you don't win the lottery and you get disappointed and angry. This is a sure sign that you're operating from a low level of consciousness, and you're never going to win the lottery with this attitude or energy field for that matter. And I've recognized this in me, and this is when I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. This is destructive, and it's not going to meet what I hope for and intend for in my life. So, other things that are going on here in the energy of in the energy of the third eye, it's a fantasy. In the energy of the crown, it's egotistical. And then in the energy of the heart is obsessed. You're obsessed with getting what you want. And it's not to say you won't get what you want because but the negative energy is going to make it a lot harder to get what you want because it's the energy of disappointment. Like you're disappointed, the intention is to get, right? The intention going on in the energy field is getting. Not giving, receiving, welcoming with open arms type of thing. It's just getting. Okay, so that's the energy of wanting something. So if you want something for your business, you got to pay attention to how does it feel. Does it feel like you're getting disappointed, you're angry, you're resentful, you're pissed off that you're not getting what you want, and that type of thing? If it is, you got to shift the energy. And that shift is into intention. Intention calibrates at 310 on the map of consciousness, which is 10 to the 310th power. And that number looks like the number 1 with 310 zeros after it. Versus wanting something is 125, which is 10 to the 125th power, but it's negatively oriented. It's not even it's not positively oriented. It's negatively oriented. And it's 1 with 125 zeros after it. So just to give you a visual on what a log is, logarithmic stuff on the map of consciousness is vast and quantum in nature, especially as you go up the map. The higher you get up to 1,000 on the map, it's huge. It's massive. So the map is a scale of 0 to 1,000, and there's different levels. So we're just talking about the level of intending for something. Is the level known as willingness on Dr. Hopkins' map. So let's talk about what the energy is for willingness on the map of spiritual progress. Because whether you want to believe it or not, everything is spiritual. Who the heck do you think created this world? Not our personality and egos. That's for sure. It doesn't have the energy to create what this world and universe is. Spirit does, by leaps and bounds. When you start to get beyond this world, like 1,000 on the map in this world is huge. Never mind, archangel energy is like 50,000 on the map of consciousness as just a starter point, and God is infinite. Like divinity is infinite in power. So hence, we have planet Earth and all of us on it. It's huge. So let's talk about the spiritual map of spiritual progress as it relates to this energy field of intending something. So the calibration is 310. The intention is balance, which I have to tell you, I've come, because I'm maybe because I give a lot of attention to the map of consciousness and study it and understand it, I experience for myself almost like pure levels, which is not common because we're a mixed bag of consciousness. For every topic that we have in our heads or in our hearts, we are operating from a different level of consciousness, likely on many topics. For example, how we treat a baby versus how we treat ourselves. Very different levels of consciousness for most of us. Most of us are negatively oriented as to how we view ourselves on some, if not many, topics. So the intention on this map of spiritual progress at this level is balance, which is, let me tell you, I've experienced like pure balance, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what balance feels like. And then when it's not mixed up with other things, it's like a pure energy field that's super awesome to experience. It really is. And what's going on in the crown chakra is that the energy is quite decisive, which is very helpful if you can't put a stake in the ground on anything. You need to align with this energy field, and this, I love to talk about finessing the field. You don't have to think too much about anything. You just intend to align with the field of decisiveness, and this is where you'll be. You'll be aligned with this 310 level. In the third eye, the energy is that of success, which is super interesting because I'm going to share a story about Oprah in a minute in regards to intention. But talk about success. Hello. The woman is quantum in nature at her ability to succeed and attract money to herself, that's for sure. And love. She attracts the love of her audience as well. And then finally, in the heart of one who is aligned with this attractor field of intent is optimistic. You're not running negative energy here. You're optimistic about everything and everyone. And I know what that feels like. And in fact, my Clifton Strengths test, one of my top 5 strengths is optimism, which I'm so thankful for. I don't need to take credit for it. This is spirit coming in saying, this Liz woman here is going to be optimistic and Susie Sunshine. And for the most part, I am, but I still can get into a negative spin about stuff, and I can still have negative feelings that are still buried within me showing up. I'm like, oh, okay, not loving this. So what's going on here on the map of, let me just check this so I was just referring to the map of spiritual progress, which is interesting to introduce you to the chakra system and the energies that are running in these different chakras when you're aligned with intention versus wanting or getting or desire. Another, in the map of consciousness, Dr. Hawkins has these different columns, and one of them is called God view and life view, meaning how do you perceive God at this level? And let me tell you, if you're operating from lower levels of consciousness on the topic of God, you're simply misperceiving the truth. You're not aligned with the truth, and you're projecting a negative feeling or trapped emotion within you onto God, which holds no truth. There's no truth to that at all. But at this level of intentionality, you have a willingness about you. Your God view is inspiring, and your life view is hopeful. You have a hopeful life view, which is huge. Let me tell you, because there's a lot of hopelessness in this world. And I once heard someone talk about being hopeful was lame when they didn't know what they were talking about. If they understood the map, they wouldn't have made those statements, because being hopeful is huge relative to the consciousness of the planet, which is below 200 right now. So when you understand that, 80% or more of the planet calibrates below 200, being hopeful is a quantum leap above that, and be grateful that you have a hopeful heart, for sure. You want to be grateful for that and appreciate it so that you can build on the energy of all of this high-level stuff that I'm suggesting that you intend for. Let me just take a peek here. All right. So that's the difference between intending for something. You want to learn to intend and let go of the wanting for something. Let go of the narcissistic core of the ego attachment to things. You can feel the difference when you start to work with, I want this, versus I intend to align with this. And really, I went through some very difficult times in my life. They've been referred to as dark nights of the soul. I can attest that it was horrific for me on 24 occasions, this spiritual path I got myself on. But in any event, I heard that, first of all, I awakened to clairaudience and clairvoyance, clairsentience, all of these refined senses that you can pick up on spirit speaking with you, seeing visions that speak volumes about a story. Like if I get shown a picture, it tells me like an entire lifetime story in a flash, which is huge. It really saves a lot of time and energy when you get the full story in a flash. I'm like, oh, Roger got that. And there was a point to this, and now I forget what it was, but maybe it'll come back to me. So in any event, you want to align with the energy, and you're going to feel the difference. And if you're attached to a desire and you keep getting disappointed, that's a sign you're attached to a lower energy field. It's a magnetic it's an impersonal magnetic attractive field, which is really how I got to understand free will. It's like creation or divinity has created a world that is vast in the levels of consciousness between 0 and 1,000. And you are free to choose any of these attractive fields to align with. And you didn't know, you probably didn't know this until now. You're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anger and resentment and disappointed. I got to let go of this energy and put my attention on something else. So intend to put your attention on intention instead of wanting. And if you just say it out loud to yourself, you can feel an energy shift. It's very different. You're not feeling the bitterness and disappointment of wanting something that you're not getting. And now you're feeling like, oh, okay, I'm going to use the energy. This is where I suggest you finesse the field, because it's impersonal. It doesn't matter. It's happy to be there for you. It'll come to you like a magnet, right? It's like, oh, here I am. You're a magnet to me. I'm coming. I serve thee with your intention to be willing and intentional about everything you do now. So that's what I'd recommend. And here's a great example of the power of intention put to work is Oprah Winfrey. And I shared this in another episode, and I'll link to that episode so that you can listen to it, or you can go watch her video on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you Google Oprah Winfrey, or Oprah, Intentionality with Gary Zukov. He's a pretty well-known spiritual writer. It's a very well-done conversation, and they have this awesome metaphor for attaching yourself to the mothership, like hooking yourself up to the mothership. I'm not going to go into the explanation of it, but when you watch it, you're going to be like, oh, I get it. But Oprah talks about how every episode of her show, she was intentional about it, and she describes it like very specifically. Her producers would come to her with an idea, and she's like, all right, what do you intend for this idea? How do you intend for this to play out? How's it going to serve the audience? How's it going to serve everybody? Like, it's, how are all the stakeholders? She's thinking of everybody, all the stakeholders, people watching the show, the people on the show, her staff, everybody. Super intentional. And you can see how the power of this played out for her hugely. It's huge because she was super disciplined about it as well. This is another thing. Pick a field that you want to be super disciplined about. I would recommend intentionality being one of them, and stick with it in everything that you do. And Dr. Hawkins would talk about this in his lectures. If you want to be kind, as an example, you intend to be kind, like pick one higher level energy field and stick to it everywhere you go as best you can, right? Until it becomes like second nature. It's just, and I pay attention to these things because I'm a teacher of consciousness. And I pick a field and I watch when it shows up. I'm like, okay, it's showing up, and it's naturally coming out of me, like I'm speaking what I intend to speak to the audience. Like I don't even think about stuff. It just comes because I'm aligned with the field that I intend to be aligned with of higher consciousness. And there's tons to choose, and that's a whole other topic. But I want you to listen to, go find this YouTube, and I'll provide a link to it below, the blog post I wrote about it, and kind of telling you the calibrations of these different things so you get it. You start to put things into context. It's like, oh, wow, intention is a quantum leap above wanting something. There's tons of power in consciousness to get what you want when you intend for it, lovingly for sure. And look at Oprah. She's a living example of it. And she incorporates a lot of love into her program as well. And I think Truth versus Falsehood calibrated Oprah Winfrey's show, not her, at 505 on the map of consciousness, which is huge, right? It's rare for any television program to calibrate in the 500s. This is the land of the spiritual domain, and it's loving, unconditionally loving. She's really at the level of loving, not unconditionally loving yet, but our world may not be ready for unconditional love because it's such a different frequency than we're used to, and I can attest to that as well because I've been in the frequency of higher states of consciousness above 540 into the 700s, which is not of this world. So anyway, that's today's Athena Arena podcast to help you master your inner game, Take tips from Oprah on intentionality. She's a living example of the power of this. And I've noticed other people bringing it up as well. So people are getting it and they're starting to align with it and use it. It's a power play in consciousness, whereas wanting something and being disappointed is not. And that's, how do you let go of that is the question. And that takes practice. And there's so many ways to let something go. I'm not going to go into that today, but I'll give you a link to one of my letting go episodes. I think I did one on letting go of anger, which is around the same energy field anyway, disappointment and anger. And you can learn how to do that. There's tons of ways to learn how to let go of something, and I'll put links on the show notes to get you started in whatever direction you are attracted to. Thanks for joining me today at the Athena Arena radio.com. If you like what's going on here, give me a little rating and review to help me, steer in another direction, or support me in getting more viewers and people. This would help my vision to raising the level of consciousness of the planet, especially people in business. You have a big influence over customers, so it's good to be of higher consciousness when you're doing it. And I so appreciate that. And then don't forget that I created a PDF with these calibrations and that you can get at the athenaarena.com/intention. And that'll give you something kind of to work with, different types of calibrations, so you can understand the spiritual map of progress and the map of spiritual progress and the map of consciousness a little bit better. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Oh, let's see. We did next week we're going to take a look at developing a content strategy and why it matters. I think. I don't know what we're going to do. Something related to marketing next week. I'm not prepared to put a stake in the ground on what that's going to be yet, because I have all these different ideas. We'll see what comes, but we'll see you then. Thanks for joining me.